made in that chapter, those verses, in fact, that are necessary for us if we're going to take a path to maturity. Because that's what I said. There's a path that needs to be taken for the church to mature. Amen. And the Father wants us to take that path. Mm-hmm. And this is not a path that we venture on our own. It's the path that God has already prescribed for us in the scriptures, right? And so we look from 1 Corinthians 12, verse 12 to 27, about 15 verses. We talked about the eye, the hand, the feet, the ears. Remember that? You can't say to one of the others, and there is a prophetic message all in there as well. But he was just giving us the backdrop of the human body, right? And how God has used that as a correlation to the spiritual body that we are. I mean, we're a spiritual body. We are a body that, and each and every one of us have a part in that body. Tell your neighbor, we have a part.
We have a part.
In that body.
In that body.
And we need to look, that's on me. We need to learn how to participate in the part that the Father has given us so that we can fulfill the assignment that he has for us. Amen. And I believe it's going to come through instruction, teaching, and partake in different aspects. And I kind of had to condense my message. And part of the problem, I couldn't get out because I heard the Spirit tell me to take off a whole section. And I was going to talk about the ministry to the body and the ministry of the body. I was going to talk about the headship. But I want to go straight to the nuts and bolts because I want to kind of include that on when we talk about the gifts of the Spirit. Because we need to talk about the charismata. Mm-hmm. And so we'll talk about the ministry of the body and the ministry to the body. So there are some gifts that God has given us. And I was going to talk about that, but it would have made me go and take this message much farther than I would like to go. Amen. Amen. And so we looked at those verses and we found out that the Father has said it as it pleased him. Amen. It wasn't done in heaven. Nobody had no decision in heaven. Mm-hmm. It wasn't done by diplomacy. It was done by sovereignty. Mm-hmm. The sovereign grace of God decided to have his grace mediated through his body. And every part of that body is a representation of that grace. That's why they call it metron. The word metron is measure. And each part has a measure. So we stopped over at 1 Corinthians 7, 17 to 24. Right? 17 says, but as God has distributed what? To every man as the Lord has what? Come on, y'all, call. 1 Corinthians 7 and 17. 7 and 17. There's no 17 1 Corinthians.
No, it's got
16. Oh, somebody got something on the screen I am not able to see. Yeah, 1 Corinthians 7 and 17. I'll slow down so that we can catch up. But as God has distributed to every man, to your neighbor, every. That means you're not left out. I know you may feel like you're the black sheep, you don't fit in, and you've been at the church a long period of time, those that are watching. But according to the blueprint, every man that he has called, there is a distribution, or there is a resource available to every man. As the Lord has what? Called. Who? Everyone. And then he says, so let him walk, or so let him respond to it. Right? Let him engage the process. Mm-hmm. Let there be an interaction with God and that man. Right? Mm-hmm. Y'all agree with that? Mm-hmm. So there is a certain grace that has been distributed to every man. No exemptions. We like to relegate it for just the ordained folks. Mm-hmm. But one of the words for, let me just help you out. This is going to probably mess you up because I remember, who was that? Chuck Flynn. A long time ago, he's a prophet. He's going on to his reward. He prophesied a few times over my life at a Royal Faith Center, and he was talking about the metron and all that. And he blew everybody out of the waters when he said he took us to find out what it means to be chosen. It means to be ordained. And the root word for chosen, one of the root words, I know one of them is eklego or something like that, but when he said, I chose you, It basically saying that I ordained you. Some translation says that. So all of us, if you don't have any rice paper, all right, you're not second-class citizens. The whole body has been anointed to operate, but it's anointed to operate in measures. There's not one human being that have all 5 graces. Nobody has it. Only one human being, and he was the God-man. And you know who that human being was that had all? Jesus. Oh, thank you. Oh. I thought y'all were going to say bishop. But it was Jesus Christ. And then Paul said, so ordained I in all the churches. So not just in Corinth, but in every church I've established, the ordination from me, the impression I impose upon those churches is that there is something to be exemplified because of the distribution of the grace that's in them. Right? That's Moffett paraphrase. And so I just given you my interpretation. So he said, every man has received from the Lord. But whatever we have received from the Lord, it's incumbent upon us to do what with it? Walk. Yeah, I ain't going to let y'all mess that up. Right? So let him walk. Right? So there is a walk. There is a testimony that what God has imparted to me, I have acknowledged it. Right? He says, is any man called being circumcised, so let him not be uncircumcised. Is any called uncircumcision, let him not be circumcised. In other words, don't revert back to the old system. Learn how to be in whatever state you're in. Right? How many know this is not necessarily happening in contemporary churches? How many know some folks find out that the wind of apostolic and prophetic came, they just gave up the pastorship. Right? I mean, that's what happened. You know, I'm just letting you know. I'm letting you know that most, when on the advent of the restoration of the fivefold ministry gifts, some of the pastors decided to go up, to give up their title and upgrade. Like it's like it's what do you call that? I mean, you don't get excited because you get one of the 5. I mean, come on, man, that's shallow. It ain't like you in school or something. Like you got your degree. I mean, getting a degree in the master's. I mean, I get it. It's an honorable act that God will bestow that upon you, but it's not to be consumed on our own lust. It's actually just for us to get lowered. I mean, because we're the bottom feeders. To be honest with you, we are to undergird the ministry, right? Unless you get caught up into other misnomers in the church, like covering and all that other stuff. And then the hierarchy comes into place, and then we get caught up in all of that bureaucracy. But it says that circumcision is nothing, and what? Uncircumcision is what? Nothing. And what's the goal? Keep the commandments
of God.
Not all 613 of them. Keep the commandments. There's only 2 for us. Right? I know you know the 2. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul. Depends on if you're looking for Matthew's view of Mark. They say it a little different, but the concept still stands true. We are to love him with everything about us. Then he tells us the second one is just equally important. Love your neighbors
as you love
them. And Jesus said the reward of keeping his commandments, him and the daddy shows up. That's what he said in John 14:21. He said we will manifest, we'll make our mansion with you. So we keep the commandments, right? Not the 613 you know about in the Torah, but the 2 that hang all the commandments, like he said in Mark. He said, upon these 2 things hang all the commandments. Love God with all your heart and love your neighbors. Yes. Amen. How many know it's easier to love God than your neighbor? But anyhow, yeah, that's the word. Yeah. But anyhow, let me get here. He said, let every man abide in the what? Same calling wherein he was called. Art thou called being a servant? Care not for it. Don't get caught up in that. But if thou mayest be made free, use it rather. For he that is called in the Lord being a servant is what? The Lord's free man. Likewise, also he that is called, being free, is Christ's servant. You got to understand, he's talking to slaves, those who was indentured servants, and he's giving them a license, he's giving them a license to be able to operate in another measure of grace, right? He's not absolving them from their duties, be it how, and most slaves were not like the typical slaves we know. It was indentured, which means it was willful, you know, and it helped them, you know, and so it was for labor, put it that way. It was labor practices. But he's saying to us that there's a calling. All of us, circumcised and uncircumcised, bond and free, regardless of your status, regardless of your rank, right? There is a calling. Everybody has a calling. He has distributed a call to everyone. Now there's general callings and there's specific callings. I ain't got time to go into that, but let us look at the word calling. So you got to understand what the calling is, because God has called Rehoboth International Ministries to Joliet as a community faith ministry, right? How many can say that?
Amen.
And God has assigned you here. It's like we read in 1 Corinthians 12. As it pleased God. I know some of us came for other reasons, but God has set you in the body as it pleased Him. So you just can't pick up and go. You can, but you might have to deal with God. And I think your arms are too short. I'm just saying. But yeah, we're too short, that's right. So, the word calling, I want to look at that real quick. Let me just hit abide. Because I don't, and we live in a society that people don't abide. They don't abide.